everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah and welcome. So I have a few books here besides me. These are all books that I have read and have really enjoyed, and the whole idea of this video is that I'm basically recommending these books to you, books that you should read, and I think there's no better time to add more books to your TBR list than at the start of the year. And that's essentially what this video is. It's just basically books I think you should read in the year 2024. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it with the first series being the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. I absolutely love it. The first book in this series is the 5th season. So the plot of this book is 3 terrible things happen in a single day. The first thing is Essen, a woman, comes home to find that her husband has murdered her son and kidnapped her daughter. The second thing is this great empire called Sansa has been destroyed by a madman seeking vengeance. And then the third thing that happens is a giant rift opens up in the world and it starts spewing ash that's going to block out the sun for years or even centuries. The magic system and world building in this book is really well done. I'm not going to spoil too much about the magic system because I do think it's worth experiencing firsthand through reading this book. But the world building is cool in the way that the world that is set in the stillness, every couple of years there are these huge natural disasters and it basically makes it impossible to survive in. So people in this world have been hardwired to survive and withstand these natural disasters. And it sort of creates this lawless land, and it's a very unique world building system that is created in this book. It's very interesting. I would highly recommend the series. It also does tackle a lot of issues that are present within current day politics and social climates. So I would definitely recommend picking up this book. The characters are really well done. One thing that I would just say going into this, there are chapters that are second person. So if you really hate the second person and you just cannot stand it at all, don't pick up the book. Next up on my list is the Poppy War Trilogy by R.F. Kuang. Now this is my other favorite series of all time, my favorite trilogy. This is tied with the Broken Earth Trilogy. I cannot pick between them, but I love them both so much and they're so well thought out. And there's not a single critique I have about this series or the Broken Earth Trilogy. They are the best of the best. I would highly recommend these series to anyone that I talk to. The first book in the Poppy War Trilogy is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is an epic historical military fantasy novel with a focus on Chinese history. So this book follows our main character Rin, who is a war orphan that lives in one of the poorer provinces of the Nikara Empire. When Rin is then put into a proposed marriage, she decides that that's not really for her, and instead what she does is she studies really hard because her plan is to ace the Keju, which is a nationwide test that is set, and if she is able to pass and do well on the test, then she'll be able to join one of the elite military schools in the province. And then it is a big shock to everyone when Rin does pass the test and actually lands a spot in the most elite and prestigious military school in the capital. But as she soon finds out, this isn't as promising as she thought it was, because being a darker skinned girl now moving to a lighter skinned province, she faces a lot of bigotry and a lot of rivalry from her classmates. Then what eventually happens is Rin learns that she has an aptitude for shamanism, which is the magical ability in this world. So we get to see that, we get to explore that. It's really well done. The characters in the series are just so well done. The dialogue is really well done, and this book is just amazing. Next up I have the Daevabad Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. This is another trilogy, another really well done trilogy. The first book in the trilogy is The City of Brass. So this is an adult fantasy inspired by the Middle East, and it's based on Middle Eastern mythology. This book follows Nari, who is a con artist on the streets of Cairo. And now Nari has never believed in magic, but one day she accidentally summons a Jinn warrior. And due to fate and her accidentally summoning him, he decides that she needs to go back to the magical city of Daevabad. That's basically what I'm going to tell you guys because the plot is really interesting and I don't want to spoil too much of it. Essentially we have a lot of political intrigue in the series. It's very heavy on the politics, but for me this is a great series if you love political intrigue and you love the plot of a book. If you love a good plot, then this book I would definitely recommend. The next book I would recommend is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I have not finished the Farseer trilogy, so that's why I'm only recommending the first book. The first book does stand really well by itself, but I think overall the whole trilogy is really good, so I would recommend reading the whole trilogy. I haven't yet though, I am planning to this year. This book follows a royal bastard named Fitz, who has a magical link to animals which is known as the wit, but the wit is frowned upon by nobility and it is often perilous to its user. When Fitz is eventually adopted into the royal family, he needs to leave his old life behind as well as the wit, and instead he starts training to become a royal assassin. If you like fantasy books with a huge, well thought out world and a lot of politics, then I would definitely recommend this series. If you want to get started with Robert Hobb, I would definitely suggest it because she is an amazing writer and she's able to invoke really good emotions in her books. Next up, I have the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Now this is a standalone novel that is based on Greek mythology, specifically Achilles and Patroclus. Achilles, as you know, is the best of all the gods. He is strong, he's swift, and he is charming to all those that he meets. Patroclus, on the other hand, is awkward and shy and hasn't had the best of luck so far, but when the two eventually meet, they become inseparable. Patroclus and Achilles are trained under a centaur named Chiron in the art of war and medicine, but when word gets out that Helen of Sparta has been kidnapped, all Greek heroes are called to lay siege against Troy. Seduced by the promise of destiny, Achilles joins this cause, and Patroclus, as always, follows along and trails behind Achilles. This book does take the opinion that Achilles and Patroclus were more than just friends, and it is a very sweet book. It is a bit heartbreaking. A lot of people say that this book also makes them cry. For me, I didn't think I was going to cry. I got to the last page and then I cried. So I would highly recommend it. It was a really moving story. It was very touching, and it's just a standalone, so if you just need a book just to pick up and it's not a big commitment, here you go, you've got your non-committal book. Next up, I have The Wolf and the Woodsman by Reid. Now this book I think is probably the least well-known book that I have in this list, but I would again really highly recommend this. This is definitely more of a romance novel if you're looking for that sort of an enemies to lovers. That's really well done though. It doesn't detract away from anything else. It still has really great world building. There still is a great plot. I finished this book and I would have liked if this was a trilogy rather than a standalone, just because I love the world, I love the characters, and I thought the conflict had the possibility to be expanded into a 3-book series instead of just being a standalone. But it is just a standalone. There are some other books that are set in this world that she has now released, but this specific book is a standalone. It's not part of a larger series. So again, if you're looking for just a singular book to read, you don't want to commit to anything big, then pick up The Wolf and the Woodsman. This book follows Evike, a young pagan woman who doesn't have power, which makes her an outcast in her village. One day when the Woodsmen come to take their yearly sacrifice of a pagan woman, Evike is betrayed by her village and she is sent instead. On their way back to the palace, the Woodsmen are attacked by monsters, and Evike and the one-eyed captain are the only remaining members left alive. But we have a twist, and the one-eyed captain is actually the prince. Evike and the prince eventually form a pact, and they begrudgingly decide to work together to stop the prince's younger brother who is trying to steal the throne from them. If you like the vibes that The Witcher has, then you would enjoy this book because the monsters are sort of similar in a sense that they're very eerie and a bit unsettling. So if you like that, then definitely pick up this book. Next up, I have Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Now this is a trilogy? It's hard to say whether this is a trilogy or a duology. Apparently this series is supposed to be a trilogy. It is a duology. I choose to see it as a standalone. I am recommending Vicious and not Vengeful in this video. In my personal opinion, read Vicious, put it down, pretend Vengeful doesn't exist. This book should have been a standalone and I will die on this hill. This book is just so smart and so well done, and the concept behind it is just beautiful. This book follows Victor and Eli, two college students who come up with the hypothesis that if someone experiences a near-death experience, that then they will gain superpowers related to that near-death experience. They decide to test it out, and lo and behold, both of them end up with superpowers. The main selling point of this book though is the relationship between Victor and Eli, because this book focuses on the descent from friends into enemies. The rivalry and the hate between these two characters that eventually happens in this book is so well written. Highly recommend reading Vicious. Not Vengeful. Don't read Vengeful. Don't do it to yourself. My next recommendation is Circe by Madeline Miller. Madeline Miller also did The Song of Achilles, which I recommended earlier on in the video, but Circe is a very similar. It's a standalone, again, also inspired by Greek mythology. Lots of fun to read. Again, if you're non-committal, this is for you. In the house of Helios, a daughter is born. Circe is a strange child. She is neither powerful like her father, nor is she alluring like her mother. Turning to the mortal world for companionship, Circe then learns that she actually has the power of witchcraft, and she can turn men into monsters and monsters into men. Threatened by Circe's power, Zeus banishes Circe to a deserted island where she will then spend the rest of her life. But Circe is able to fill her time with the occult, and she actually crosses paths with many of Greek's famous figures. But there is danger too, for Circe is a woman alone on an island, and she unwittingly draws the wrath of gods and men. Circe must eventually summon her strength and choose whether she belongs with the gods that she was born into or with the mortals that she has come to love. I would definitely recommend this book if you enjoy a strong female protagonist, and especially if you enjoy more witchy vibes. This book does sort of have that atmosphere of like witchy, cozy, a woman alone on her island tending to her herbs. I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun. It's a nice, quick and short read if you're looking for something like that, so I would definitely recommend it if you haven't read it. Next up on my list is the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab, with the first book being A Darker Shade of Magic. Now, this book is a bit more of a young adult fantasy, but it is a really well done young adult fantasy. This book follows Cal, who is one of the last Antari, people with the magical and coveted ability to travel between the parallel Londons. There are 4 different Londons in this book. There's Red London, Grey London, White London, and Black London, and these Londons are all set in parallel universes. Grey London is our London. Red London, where the book is set and where Cal grew up, is basically the London with the most magic, and it is the London where magic flourishes the most. Cal serves the royal family in Red London as an ambassador, going between the Londons and passing messages from the royal families. But on the side of this, Cal is also a smuggler who smuggles little artifacts between the different Londons that people will then pay for just so they can get a glimpse of a different world. But this hobby of Cal's isn't as safe as he thought it was, and eventually an artifact from Black London, which is the London that has been destroyed and overrun by magic, makes its way into one of the other Londons. This book doesn't have any big standout things. It's more just like a good all-rounder when it comes to the world building, the magic system, the characters, the dialogue. It sort of knocks all those things out the park, but it's not anything spectacular, but it is still a really good read and really enjoyable, especially if you're just getting into fantasy, or you want a slightly easier fantasy read that doesn't read quite as YA as some other fantasy books do. Then I would definitely recommend picking up this series. So I have 2 series here now. I didn't know which one to include, and I wanted to only have 10 books recommended, but I am technically doing 11 now. It's just I've lumped them under a category together because I didn't know which one to pick. I've got the We Hunt the Flame duology over here, and then I also have the Cruel Prince trilogy here. So these I sort of just lumped into their own group, which I called If You Want to Enemies to Lovers Romance. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black is a young adult, fae-inspired fantasy book with a lot of political intrigue and a lot of politics. Essentially, the plot of this trilogy is we follow Jude, who is one of a twin, and she is a human. She was born in the human world to human parents, but when her parents are murdered by a fae, she is brought back to Fairyland. I think it's called Fairyland. Alfheim, the fairyland of Alfheim, not just Fairyland. 10 years down the line, Jude wants nothing more than to be accepted and belong in the world of the fairies, and she does everything in her power to be accepted by them. But many fae despise humans, especially Prince Carden, the wickedest and youngest son of the High King. To win a place at court, Jude must defy him and face the consequences. But as Jude becomes more deeply entwined in the trickery and bloodshed, she discovers she has her own passion for the treachery and deception. This book is a really interesting read. The main character is really well done. She has this great sense of grayness to her where she is willing to do what it takes to get what she wants. I'm just going to put this out there. Let's say if you have read ACOTAR and you found that wasn't for you and you think this book is similar to ACOTAR, I'm just going to say that I wouldn't say this book is similar to ACOTAR at all. It's very different. It has a plot. It's just a great series actually all around. If you've been worried about the series, I would recommend just trying it out and seeing what you think about it first before judging it, because I think I was also a little bit skeptical at first, but it did win me over in the end. Then We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal. This is a duology with We Hunt the Flame being the first book. I haven't read We Free the Stars, but it is actually on my TBR for this year. If you want to see what books I want to read this year, then I will leave that linked in the description below and also overhead. Unlike The Cruel Prince, this book has a dual POV, but it does still have a bit of an enemies to lovers plot line that is very prominent in the story. Again, the enemies to lovers romance line is not the main feature of the book. It is used as more of a device to further the plot, but it is prominent there and it is well done. And I would say if you do enjoy enemies to lovers, you would enjoy this book just because of that plot line, even though it isn't the center focus of the story. Zafira is a hunter who hunts in the cursed forest of the Ars, disguising herself as a man so that her achievements are not stripped away if she were to be found out as a woman. Our other POV is Nasir, also known as the Prince of Death, and he is an assassin to his father, the Sultan, assassinating all of those who try and defy his father while hiding his compassion so that his father does not find out about it and punish him. War is brewing in the kingdom as the Ars, the cursed forest, is sweeping closer, and Zafira is then sent on a quest to try and find a magical item that will restore magic to the kingdom. But Nasir is sent on a similar mission to steal the artifact and bring it back to his father. So that is sort of the plotline of this book. It is a really great book. Again, highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun to read. The characters in this book are really well done. They're not as well fleshed out as some other books, and they can sometimes feel a bit more playful and childish, but the banter between them is quite fun to read. There's definitely more comedy in this book compared to some of the other books on my list. The plot isn't as strong as some of the other books as well. It can get a bit predictable at times, but it was still a really fun read, and I think a few of you would actually enjoy this book. So that is it from my side for recommendations for books that you should read in 2024. If you have any books that you think I should read in 2024, then please leave them in the comments below and I'll go through them and maybe add some of them to my TBR. If you want to see my TBR, I will leave that linked in the description below. And yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like and hit subscribe, and if you want to be notified every time I upload, don't forget to hit the post notifications. If you want to find even more of me, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram, and I would love to chat to you guys over there. If you want to send me a message or talk about books or something like that, don't be afraid, don't be shy, come and hit me up. We can chat about books. I will see you guys all next week Sunday with another video, and yeah, bye guys.